What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 211, and we're talking farm to ECE with Brittany Martens of Child and Adult Care Program. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Right off the bat, ECE, what does that mean?
That is early care and education. So that's your child care centers and your home providers across the state and nationally.
Okay. And then your work in the program is for the state of Colorado?
Yep.
That's
so
correct?
I'm housed at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment in the Nutrition Services branch. So it ends up being that acronym soup. So CDPHE, NSP, but then the Child and Adult Care Food Program, I don't think everyone's as familiar with it, but it's similar to the National School Lunch Program, where we reimburse for meals served based on your income category.
Got it. I want to set, because to your point, there's a lot of acronyms, and I've never worked in government or in major corporate, so I never understand all these acronyms. And there's a lot of acronyms getting thrown out these days with what's happening in the landscape of COVID, with restaurants, all of that. So I'm very sensitive, Brittany, to those. So, all right, now I want to backtrack a little bit because this channel is so important. Best Served Young. And we have been, over the last 12 weeks, been really focused on youth education, school garden lunch programs, and have met some amazing people, heard some really incredible stories. And having you on is important because you are embedded at the state level. So there's a lot of things that are happening at the state level that I think are very important that go downstream into a lot of the programs of the people that we've talked about at the school level and at the foundation level. So I think that's great. I also really appreciate having you on specifically because of your restaurant background. And so our audience being so restaurant professional heavy, we're always speaking to them. And so sometimes they go, I don't have kids. I'm not in the school garden thing yet. We've gotten to talk to some amazing people that work in the space that get to make ramen for their kids in Creede, Colorado, or get to use local produce right off the trees in the western slope of Colorado. So I think it's fascinating there. So I want to take people back. For you personally, restaurants, give us a little bit kind of the background of the restaurants, and then the catalyst for you moving into something that most of us in restaurants never imagined going into: feeding children, being a part of, the school system, being a part of that side of hospitality, because it is, yet we don't recognize it so often. So take us back a little bit. You side restaurants.
Well, I grew up in a home that was very scratch cooking, and it wasn't necessarily from a need to be healthy, but more so from a financial standpoint and a passion standpoint. My mom grew up on a farm, and she cooked for her whole family and all the farm hands. And so growing up, I would come home, we would every night have a scratch cooked meal. And it was the cheapest and most nutritious way for her to do that. So from a young age, I had a garden and I did cook. I had a short bout there where I wanted to be a teacher. So I actually went to college for a semester to be a teacher and realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. And that every moment that I could, I was at someone's home that had a kitchen. Whoever that person was, didn't even matter if they were my friend. I'd just be like, oh, you have a kitchen? And I'd be at their place cooking meals for everybody, and they'd all chip in $5 and I'd cook a huge meal for everyone. So I left after that semester and actually went to culinary school. Coming out of culinary school, I was very nervous and not really sure where to go with it, and landed at the kitchen in Boulder. So that was my first restaurant. And I think that was a huge reason that I'm so embedded in farm to table. Is my very first restaurant was the farm to table restaurant in Colorado for a very long time. And working there, I loved it. I thought I would work there for absolutely forever. I was in love with every day of it. And then I had my daughter, and my husband, Eric Lee, is also a chef. And you can't really have two chefs working 13, 14-hour days.
Right.
We did it for a couple of years. We called it high five parenting. So I would go in and do the morning shift, and then we'd high five at lunch, and he'd go in and do the night. And it was the update, what'd she eat? When she nap? What are we doing next? And it just, in the long term, wasn't going to work out for us. And I had also become very passionate about her nutrition. So having her made me start looking into that. What should she eat? Breastfeeding for a year and then making all her baby food. And I started to become very aware. And I also was a participant in WIC, the Women, Infant, Children program. So I was a very young mom. I was 21, and I took advantage of that program and was a part of it and really looked up to those public health professionals and everything they taught me, and just kind of started to want to become part of that. So I went back to school and got my bachelor's of science in human nutrition and dietetics. And at the end of that, there's two pathways, basically. You can become a registered dietitian, or you can go the other route and see what you can do with it. But to become a registered dietitian, it requires an internship, which is unpaid for a year, and you actually have to pay for it. And it's a huge equity thing, actually. A lot of people can't get those internships. And for our family, that wasn't really a viable choice. And so I decided to see what I could do with my culinary background. And I ended up finding this amazing position at the time as a team nutrition educator for a grant called CHOP. And that was the CACFP's first step into farm to ECE, was through cooking up healthy options with plants. And that was brought on by Tanya O'Connor. She was the director of that grant there.
Okay, this is such a path that I think a lot of people in restaurants know. As you're talking through this, like, yep, I know it, I've seen it, I've heard it. Like, so many people for that. When we start to have families and things like that, it's just so hard, the schedule and that. And I'm glad that you said kind of why it was important for you specifically to kind of do this new work, and you being motivated by the nutrition of a child, I think is very, very compelling. Because then I was going to rib Eric a little bit, be like, well, I don't know that he's the more talented chef. So why shouldn't he find something else? Because you should stay in restaurants. So I guess I guess the ribbing of Eric will come again.
No,
later.
I'll give him that. He was years ahead of me in the industry. He was about to make sous chef, and I was like 2 years in, like, oh gosh, he's the more passionate in that kitchen atmosphere. He crushes that. So I'll give him that. I was ready to sit in an office, I think.
100%. So, all right. So this makes a lot of sense to me. One last little thing I want to hover on for just a moment at kind of a large level. We've been talking a lot in these shows as we have chefs that have kind of moved from restaurants, what we know as food and beverage hospitality, the realm that we have spent our entire careers in, and said they went kind of into this food area. And a lot of them said, I didn't realize that I could, or it felt like you were kind of potentially giving up on, your culinary aspirations and just going to like reheat food in a bag for like ungrateful kids. The reality is a lot of them said, I get to make amazing food, and I'm using ingredients that are local, and some of them are using more ingredients that are local than a lot of restaurants that are farm to table. So I think there's just a fascinating dynamic for you. Speak to those culinary professionals out there that are going into similar. Is it a path that you believe people that have culinary aspirations can still feel that they are achieving their goals?
Absolutely. And I think that not only will they achieve their goals, but they have the opportunity to really invest in a system that needs them. A lot of the cooks at childcare centers have never been a cook before. This is their first job, and maybe they just took it because their kid gets a partial discount if they work at the center. And there's incredibly high turnover. So when you have a chef who doesn't have as much knowledge, or a cook at these centers, they're going to do the very best that they can. But if you have someone who has that skill set, that knowledge, those knife skills are key to get that food out quick. You have the ability to bring that scratch cooking in and buy those products. You also have that procurement knowledge, the relationship building, and we need them. The schools and the childcare centers need more professionals.
Right there, the need part of it has been noticeable for me. In restaurants, unfortunately, a lot of times we call them bodies. Like, they're just bodies occupying space. Hands, I need hands. And it's like, sometimes, it's underappreciated because you're churning all the time. And so people feel that sometimes, but they still want to be a part of feeding other humans, which is the fundamental hospitality that's in us. And that was the one thing that felt like you had a little bit more need. Like that you were so fundamental to everything that happened with the ability for you to feed those children, versus it just being a bunch of more nameless, faceless people on tickets that are ordering the food. So there was this this interesting relationship that was formed, and that's kind of what I hear you speaking on. So I appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit more about the work that you're doing specifically. So who do you serve? Who is the community that you're of service to? Give us lay the land for us a little bit more.
Absolutely. So currently we're working under the Association of State Public Health Nutritionists mini grant. So we get a very small amount of funds, but we make the most of it. So last year with our mini grant, we took those funds down to the San Luis Valley. And the reason we like to focus our work down there is the demographics. You've got
Okay.
the lower socioeconomic status, the lower income families, higher rates of obesity. It's an area that we really wanted to try to see what the barriers were to farm to ECE in a community that had all of the infrastructure to run the program. So in the San Luis Valley, there's the Valley Roots Food Hub. And the Valley Roots Food Hub works with all of the farmers in that area. They reach a little bit into New Mexico, and they work with a tribe there that does some beautiful cornmeal. They work with the Amish farmers there, and they get all of their eggs from the Amish farmers. And they really just bring it all together. They deliver. So it's this really rich infrastructure, and none of the childcare centers were using it. They have a great system with the school. The school does the Colorado Proud Day, and they buy in a few things, but the childcare centers weren't using it. So we brought in a program to look at the barriers. Why aren't we purchasing locally? Do we know it's there? What's going on? So we brought on 2 childcare centers, and over the course of 13 weeks, they purchased, we gave 2,700 pounds of fresh produce. And then each week we would kind of survey them. How did it go? What did you need? And the feedback and the quotes we got, the kids thinking the first time they cooked beets, they smelled like dirt because they didn't know the proper way to cook them. And I don't know if they washed them. So just like giving us that opportunity to do technical assistance and have phone calls, provide those recipes. And by the end of the program, they were ordering beets every single week. But it even went more than that. Like, what systems needed to be in place? Do they know what a Chiyoga beet is? And providing pictures each week with the ordering guide. And that's where I think the chefs would come in great, is because they have that knowledge. Yeah. But it's so fun to work with everyone. So this year has really been delayed because of COVID. As all of us have experienced in every facet of our life, COVID has kind of derailed us. But we are not running a really robust program like we had hoped, but we do still have 2 centers. And this year we're offering the produce at 80% off if they order over $150 with free delivery. And we're also doing a CSA program to work with home providers. And previously in our work with the CHOP grant, we found that the home providers were showing better success rates. And I think that really has to do with the intimate relationship of only having 6 children in their home and watching their care provider cook for them, and the excitement of the box showing up at their front door every Friday. Yeah. We're really building on all of that and just information gathering right now so that we can take this program statewide.
All right. A couple things I want to unpack with that. 2,700 pounds of produce. How many people is that serving? Is it all just kids? Does it feed staff as well? Like, give me a little bit of that. And then I also do want to know, is this one person at one facility feeding X number of people? Like, break down the numbers for me.
Yeah, definitely. So at the 2 different centers, we ended up having an impact level of over 150 kids. They tried over 25 different fresh fruits or vegetables. No, and then we had the 2 different centers. So they've split it about half and half there with that 100+ kids, just right down the middle. They did feed all the children, but then because it was a new experience for them, and they're not a restaurant, these are not commercial kitchens. They have a home refrigerator, maybe 2 of them if they're fortunate. So really learning how to store everything properly and where to store it. So if things were going to turn, they actually would just put it out on a table and give it all to the families. So anything they didn't use was donated to all of the families and staff members.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. We've been saying on this show a lot, give a kid a vegetable, change their life. It absolutely can change their trajectory forever. I think it's a really important sentiment. You can see the smile on my face when the amount of new foods that kids taste, it really matters. Like, it really matters. So I appreciate hearing that. Is this one person at one of those facilities producing all the food?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they each only have 1 cook. And that was one thing I was going to say, is if you were to go into a childcare center, you have so much menu control. If you've never had the chance to have that menu control, like, hey, you get a whole menu, 3 meals a day. But yes, that is one person running that. And if they are out, teachers just step in. Not many of them have subs. So it can be like the director of the center will now become the cook for the day if they're cooking out. So it's
Did either of the people that are running those programs have previous culinary experience?
Not all of them, no. Very few actually. And that's something that I use my background to try to bring people up in. So I run culinary trainings in collaboration with Live Well Colorado with Chef Jessica, who you said was on just last week, right?
Yes,
Yes.
Jessica, the dynamo.
She
Yeah.
and I love working with her. She's amazing. But we actually just hosted one last week virtually since COVID. And we had 43 childcare cooks on their cameras. I sent them a chef's knife and a gift card so they could go buy the produce and learning those knife skills because they don't typically have that background.
All right. This is such important work. What is needed? What is missing? This is a conversation so often. There's so many great people. There's headway being made, yet there's so far to go. So when you're talking about they have home fridges, the funding is never enough, access to the food, knowing the culinary skills. So let's break down some of the needs in that system. So hopefully we can connect more people into that, because a lot of times just knowing what the challenge is allows other people the opportunity to be of support, to be of service. Too often we just are so siloed. So that is a big part of the function of this show, is just highlighting that there's certain needs, or that there's inspiring people out there that you might want to support. So let's go into the needs. What do the different programs need? What's missing? What can we as a greater community or culinary community or funders do to support?
I think investing in your own communities. And
Good.
not just your neighborhood school, but the schools outside of your neighborhood that are still a part of your community. If they have a garden and you see that it is truly just going down because no one's over there watering it or harvesting it, and you have that time or ability, offering that. Volunteering. As a cook, if you volunteered, if you took that time to mentor someone, that could be amazing and could be a really great experience for you to see what it means to be a childcare cook or a school nutrition cook. Working in those realms. Funding, always bring all the funding.
All the money. We need all the money.
Yeah. Those nonprofits like Live Well, Cooking Matters, they are doing amazing work. I know Cooking Matters is always looking for chef volunteers to come and teach knife skills and to invest in that way. I think as a parent, if any of you are parents out there, your pressure on the center that you find these things important. Ask those questions. Why are you serving all this canned peaches? Colorado grows peaches. Do you know where to get those peaches? Or really holding everyone accountable. Yes, it's hard for them to provide those food, but if they know that their community wants it, parents want it, their children like it, I hear oftentimes, I don't buy that because the children won't eat it. The children are just going to throw it away and I don't have money to throw away. That's a very fair statement. I understand that. So as parents, taking the time to show your children food if you're able to. But the thing that I think is so amazing about farm to education is that not many of these children have those opportunities at home. So being able to invest in those centers or sponsor a center, if you have a CSA, if you bought a second CSA and donated that to your children's childcare center or your neighborhood childcare center, those are amazing opportunities to help children who maybe don't have the space at home to have a garden, whose parents have an apartment or they don't have time or knowledge, whatever that might be, community gardens, etc. All of those things matter.
Here's a couple of things that really are of interest to me. One, I have no idea what food my two sons are eating at their schools. One's at a Montessori school, one's at the academy, a charter school. I don't know what they eat there, right? We mostly are packing food for them quite often. I don't know. And it's like my job to know about these things. So even me, I don't know. And I think that's an important thing. There's a couple of things you said, the CSA and then the volunteering. Mm-hmm. A cook has the opportunity. I could contact my, ECE and be like, can I come down and work with you and support you? There's an opportunity there. There's no legality, nothing that's going to hold that back.
The legality would come in if you wanted to work with the children. Okay. I think that if you just wanted to offer your time to the cook themselves, that would be an agreement between you two, obviously, the chef and the center. If they felt comfortable bringing you in, you would definitely, no chefs would be allowed to interact with the children unless they went through a full background check.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah,
it's too crazy to interact with kids anyway. Yeah,
those opportunities would be better to go through like Slow Food Denver and their Cooking with Children program, which is amazing. They can always use volunteers, and I know that they will vet their volunteers really well. That could be a great opportunity too.
That's great. We just dropped cookingmatters.org into the comments for people to check out for sure. And then actually, the next segment today at 1:00 Mountain Time, we're going to have Slow Food Denver on. So
Oh, wonderful.
yep,
Perfect. Moving right
perfect
in.
connection there. I really appreciate that. CSA, I have the opportunity to potentially bring food in the system. This is another thing with the regulation of what food is allowed to be brought into schools, into these childcare programs. Is there that opportunity? Is that a question we need to be asking? It just felt like they do what they do, and I don't want to like mess with it because I don't know what that means.
Right.
I have the opportunity to potentially put pressure on that.
I think that I would put pressure on that in terms of helping. Like, hey, I'm buying CSA from my local farmer. My kids go to your school. Would you be interested if I were to donate that? And it's a big thing that a lot of centers have had to learn about, as well as the food safety side of buying local. There's kind of been this shift of, is it okay? And now in COVID to, it's necessary because I have limits at the grocery store. I can't get everything I need. And they have this beautiful farmer 5 miles down the road from them that's just happy to sell to them. So it's safe, it's clean, it's wonderful. It's actually safer. There's less people touching your food when you buy direct from a farmer. You're helping your economy, you're helping the farmers. It's an amazing thing to do. I would definitely ask. I would reach out to your child's teacher. I think a CSA in a classroom, the best thing you can do is just taste test. Just raw taste test with the kids, or letting them look at it, doing experiments. I always tell parents to, we're always the expert. And I think our kids get sick of hearing, yeah, I know, or okay. So with our kids at the grocery store, I play scientist. So they'll say, Mom, what's this? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. What's it look like? Do you think it has seeds inside? Like it has them on the outside? What do you think it smells like? It's purple on the outside. What color do you think it'll be inside? Don't be the expert all the time, let them try to experiment and think about the food a little bit more. And I think that's a great way for teachers to approach a CSA box. It's just, oh, what is this? Let's learn about it. There's amazing resources and curriculums out there as well. And I'm always happy to share those with anyone who's interested. Just shoot me.
Oh, that's good. Well, actually, I'm going to ask you to hop back in. And if there's any other links, just drop links into the comments themselves, because a lot of people use the links that we drop in there to just outbound, find more information. We're always trying to share as much information into the ecosystem as possible. The last thing that you mentioned that I wanted to kind of unpack there too, that I thought was really great. If you see the garden going to waste, and I saw somewhere in there, Sophie, pop up Robin's comment, Robin Clemens, who was on as well, who's at Daystar Life Center in St. Pete, Florida, had a really great way that actually her and her husband, who's an architect, worked on the school garden. The school garden is right out front. And I was fascinated with that. And all of a sudden, especially now in this moment that there's a lot of challenges, people are lining up to get their kids because they can't go inside the building. And now they're lining up right next to the garden. And Robin created the opportunity. It's a learning moment. Like, what's that? Oh, that's okra. What's that? That's Swiss chard. Yeah. And so I'm fascinated in that. So the opportunity for us to engage with those gardens, because I think sometimes you just see the random flower beds over here, the random raised beds. There's nothing growing in them because some volunteer 4 years ago tried to do it, and then their kids no longer at the school and they left. So how do we kind of sustain that effort around connecting them to the food growing itself? Do you see any opportunities in that space?
Yeah, I think that if you're a parent and you see that and you know the names of every single one of those plants, but nobody else does, make signs. Make signs, put them in the garden, make a garden path for them, or draw it on the sidewalk with sidewalk chalk, or whatever it might be, to encourage people to activate with the garden if it's just there. Most of the time that a garden is no longer used is because, like you said, someone came in and they were really excited, and now maybe they no longer work there. Right. So if you have the time to give, invest it in that garden, and just know that you're investing so deeply in those children. Having all these different programs I've worked in, watching a child's excitement about something they've grown it's unlike anything you've ever seen. You have children who tell you they dislike everything, and then they grew a tomato and they grew a cherry tomato and they watched it sprout and turn green and slightly yellow and then to red, and they can't wait to eat it. And it's the best thing you've ever seen. And teaching children to have that delayed gratification is actually a really, really important part of our culture. We don't have that right now. Our children live in an instant gratification world. Their food can be ready in 3 minutes at the takeout window. If they want to know how many moons are on Jupiter, we ask Google and we tell them instantly. Instead of having to go to the library and read about all the different planets and all the different moons, they have it instantly. And when you want to eat a tomato and you're trying to grow it, all of a sudden there's this delayed gratification. And the studies have actually shown that teaching children to have that ingrained in them, that they can wait for a reward, leads to a healthier life. They'll go to college, they have higher educational attainment, less use of drugs, less use of alcohol. It's this really, really important piece. I think it also comes to cooking too. If you don't see that end goal of that perfect cake or that beautiful chili, you're not going to spend the time on it. You're going to go out and buy it in a can or run through the bakery. So it's really teaching these children that it's worth it, that you can do this and it's worth it. And I think that that's what's so important about gardening with children and Farm to ECE.
That's it. Episode's over. That was amazing. What a mic drop. Way to end. That is exactly what we need. Right on the 25-minute mark. You're a pro, Britt. That was really, really great. I really appreciate it. I love that we're bringing a lot more information in the system. And Sophie's dropped a lot of links in. I think it's super important for people to know all the resources that they have. And even me, now I'm going to ask. I'm literally going to pick up a kid from the Hope Montessori right next door to our house. And I'll say, hey, is this of interest? Is there an opportunity? They might say no. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting just to ask and see.
Yeah,
we're going up to Black Cat Farms every week and getting stuff from our buddy Eric Skokin up there, and the boys like picking out different vegetables. What's that? What's this? What's that? And we buy it and we try it and we do something with it. And we have a rule that you try everything. You don't have to like everything.
That's right? What we do in our house too.
We allow them to try everything, and you never know. Like simple things that you think that they would like, you're like, how do you not like that? And then they eat raw oysters and they love them.
Yes.
You never know with kids.
Our son won't eat the shrimp, but he'll only eat the tail.
Perfect.
Crispy tails. Great. Have fun, buddy.
Perfect. I love it. You never know. Just keep introducing them to stuff. And kids, it's easy to say, keep introducing yourself to things. Keep introducing. We see a lot. The kids are leveling up the education into the parents, and I think that's a great way. So,
I call them makers. They bring it home and they affect everyone.
I love it. All right, Brittany Martens, everybody. Great episode. I appreciate you being on. You have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Bye. All right, everybody. That was a great episode. Brittany is a wealth of knowledge, the excitement. I just love also having the restaurant background. So it really is compelling knowing that so many of our audience are restaurant professionals, that there's just this whole myriad of places that we can take our love of food and cooking and hospitality. And the fact that Brittany is able to do that and do that meaningful work and find such an impact, and that there's such a need, it really matters. So again, Best Served Podcast 211. And that was Farm to ECE, Early Childhood Education with Brittany Martens of Child and Adult Care Food Program, which is part of the state of Colorado's initiatives. And so appreciate you all as always.